Hello, everyone, and welcome to the DojoLIVE recap show this Monday, January 30th, 2023. My name is Kim Lantis, and recapping with me today is Mon Novello. Hi,
Hi.
Mon.
Hello.
Yes, so what do we do here on the recap show? We talk about all of last week's shows as a way to recap them. And of course, if that sparks your interest, you can go ahead and watch all of the shows on our site, dojo.live, and we'll introduce what we've got coming up this week as well. So last week, it was a very busy week with a total of 4 shows.
It was
Right?
amazing.
It was amazing. It was exhausting. But very, very good. All 4 conversations were fantabulous. Fantabulous. I just made up that word, guys. So you heard
That's
it first
amazing.
here on Dojo Live. We spoke with MicroShare, Instant, Pismo, and wrapped up the 4-part series all about the metaverse with the group from Encora. So let's start first with MicroShare. This was all about data ownership in the age of digital transformation, answering the question of where. Where is the line between surveillance and sensing, and why does it matter? With Tim Panagos, I think is the correct pronunciation, who is the CTO and co-founder of MicroShare. What did you think of that show, Mon?
It was really, really interesting. Like, I really didn't think before about this line between, digital safety, like in the real world, like when you are going to the store and swiping your card or being surveillance. I don't know, but
Surveilled, I guess.
surveilled. And there is like a collection of data there, and we are not really paying attention. Like when we are online, we do know, that this page requires cookies thing, and then you can just decide if you go there or not. But I really liked the fact that he brought up this, like this is like a thing too, and this requires like some data security, data safety, which is what we do.
Yeah, and MicroShare is really great. I think we didn't even get into the whole deep capabilities of what they're able to do, but I remember that one of the things he brought up was also sensing with infrared versus camera. And he also talked about the idea of, in the future, perhaps the only sensing that will even be necessary is audio, because if you're able to correctly process that audio, you don't really need much else to determine what was or was not happening in any given space. But the reach of what they're doing with MicroShare and their sensing is great, and is completely amplified coming into and out of COVID and the pandemic, and just how there's this real sense of how to make our internal spaces even better. And they're able to, of course, apply their sensing and their machine learning and AI on top of that to help us make great conclusions, right, of where we can become more efficient, how to better use our space, etc. But I think my takeaway from him, he was talking about the difference between surveillance and sensing, and just the sense of kind of empowerment, I think. He kind of laid it out in what needs to come first is awareness, like we were just talking about, right?
Yeah.
That people fully understand and they're aware of what's happening in terms of surveillance or sensing. And then also this access to it, like what are we learning, what are we seeing, and just having the ability to kind of see that data if we need to, and then ultimately control it, like we were talking about, right? Opting in, opting out, and those types of things. And I think it was just a really interesting conversation about what comes next.
Yeah, of course. And I really think that, like, going into the topic, I feel like this generation is really getting used to a life with, awareness and access, and even their whole processes of how they study, how they buy. Actually, I think the next show was about how this new generation is completely redefining the way they do online shopping, and it's exactly the reason this other company, popped in and started doing something about it.
Yeah, that was with Instant and Sunil Madhu. He is the CEO, and they were talking about, or he talked about rather, arbitraging and securitizing fraud risk in the market, and really how today's businesses are managing fraud and compliance risk, and why such sort of old or traditional approaches could be causing financial exclusion, right, for the future demographic. And the future demographic, like you're saying, the current more younger generations who might not have as much credit history or just, just different ways of doing things, and not excluding that and being exclusive, and just that new approach, which is really, really interesting.
Yeah, my main takeaway from that show was, I think, the fact that, yeah, we are redefining everything, but I also never thought about it from the business side of
Mhm.
things. Like, I'm used to, buying something, and then if I don't like it, I just return it. I just call from a refund or anything. And there is so much risk for the actual businesses from that, because
Yep.
you are really dealing with people who are easily faking things, and if you continue with the old ways, it's just taking greater risks, which eventually costs money
Yep.
for those businesses. And I really love the fact that they said this is something that we need to protect businesses too, like they need to have rights too.
Yeah, it's about protecting the business, but I think what they take that step back at instant, and it's more about getting you as many users as possible,
Oh, of course,
and
yeah.
not letting accepting all as many of the good ones, and the ability to reject as many of the fraudulent attempts as
Yeah,
possible.
of course.
And I think his analogy, he was talking about paper clips versus gold bars.
Mhm.
And also this perspective just on fraud in and of itself is that this level of acceptance that like it's going to happen.
Mhm.
So the trade-off of allowing a few paper clips, right, to the
Yeah.
analogy, to be lost or whatever, but you're gaining all of these gold bars in return. And I think that was really great. And then just the tech that they've got and their setup that their name alludes to, how fast and easy it is for
uh,
businesses to implement such solutions. And they really they walk their talk in the sense that they've got a really cool insurance policy too, that if there
yeah.
is something that slips past them and their acceptance rates and their compliance, their know your client, know your customer.
Of
It's a
course.
pretty fabulous. So I
Yeah.
thought that his take just on fraud in general was
Yeah.
pretty refreshing.
Yeah, it was. And speaking of fast, the show with Pismo saying how they implemented like over 3,300. I don't even remember
I
the
think,
number.
yeah, this is the Pismo show. This was
Yeah, the
with
Pismo
Rodrigo
show.
Melato, who's the sales VP. And this was about legacy modernization, specifically with banking,
Mhm.
how that need is inevitable and how quick that this has happened. Like it applies to
Yeah.
pretty much every company, not just the newer banks, which is something that I learned, right? Because just the way that tech is moving so quickly today. But this idea of the next generation core system and how it's in tapping into the cloud and just different elements of how that's able to put them and outpace their competitors. And I think that was right. With the legacy team, they had quoted something about 300, I want to say 300 or 30, maybe it was 30. 300
It was
sounds like a lot.
30. Yeah.
30,000 hours to implement it. And Pismo came back with an estimation of like 200 or something
Yeah.
with their technology, which was crazy, right? Very
Yeah.
crazy fast.
Yeah, really, it really was. Like I really like the fact that it's something that is going to revolutionize safety and security for everyone. Like I would feel so safe if I could see a picture of me, when I'm doing anything like any impulse buy, because sometimes I'll look at my credit card score and I'm like, where did I buy these?
Yeah.
And I think like data safety is something that everyone's talking about lately.
Definitely. And I think the idea there is that banks in general and this idea of the front end, everything looking fast and pretty, right, on the user side of what
Mhm.
we're able to interact with. But then what's happening on the back end is what really needs to go faster. And I think we were
Yeah.
talking about, like, cool, that was easy. I did the exchange, but it's still taking me 72 hours to get my
Mhm.
refund or whatever it might be. And so they're able to kind of catch that up and just how important it is, right? And I think a lot of the different shows we've had have tapped into online banking is fewer and fewer brick and mortar buildings is where people are doing their banking, and so it's got to look and feel and move similar to what that physical experience would be
Mhm.
like. And we did wrap up the show with that fourth of the four-part series all about the metaverse with the UI UX researchers and designers at Ancora. This was all about social impact and how the metaverse is being used to better the lives of people with healthcare, education, and more. Your takeaways on that, Shomon?
I remember the conversation about how the metaverse is like this reality where we are pulling. I don't know how to explain this part. Pulling like traditions and behaviors from a real world, so we don't really know if there's going to be like discrimination or disabilities that are exclusive, and that whole like the whole concept of disabilities that are exclusive to the digital world, to the AI world, is like such an incredible and terrifying concept at the same time. I don't know how, like, that's the thing that really kept my mind occupied, because it's something that could absolutely happen, and it's such an important conversation to have. So I think I kind of hyper focused on that one
Yeah.
conversation.
The trick of how currently the metaverse, a lot of it is focused on what's happening visually. But how
Hmm.
can you get individuals who can't see, right,
Hmm.
equally involved within the metaverse, which is obviously, and I think this show was a great show because it was a lot about asking the right questions, not
Yeah.
necessarily having the answers yet, but the direction in which things need to move. But certainly the way that the metaverse is used today is not just in entertainment, and it has been, I think, one of the things we were talking about, the ability to use simulators and virtual reality, augmented reality, or things. It's been around for decades, but it
Yeah.
was not accessible as it is today. Right? You have to go on site to these specific rooms and different things. And now today we can do that with our cell phone and a set of
Yeah.
goggles, right? But to, I think it was Flavia's point, she was a guest on that show. It's still not, her argument is it's not accessible enough, even still, which I think was an interesting takeaway. Like accessible, we still need to make it more affordable. And for
Yeah.
me, that was an interesting crossover, right? Like accessibility and affordability are not necessarily synonymous. And
Hmm.
and I think it's definitely something to take into consideration. And I think we ended that show on this idea of libraries, like we have access to public libraries and different things. Maybe eventually, if it hasn't happened already, it would be a really cool space to also be able to experience the metaverse for anyone, right? Which is
Yeah.
sort of what it's all about. And that leads into, I think, a really good conversation of what this week's show, I do say show, folks, it's a slower week. Coming off of a really
Oh,
busy week, we're going to have a slower week here on Dojo Live
so we
with
can
just
rest.
one show. We can rest. We'll rest, but we'll see you again here at Thursday the 2nd at 10 o'clock Pacific, same time. We'll be speaking with Richard Vincent. He is the CEO and co-founder of Fundamental VR, so quite fitting coming off of our Metaverse series, all about the future of medical training, right? How to accelerate human competency via precision VR simulation, and answering the question of how. How can VR and haptic technology enhance a human capability and improve patient care? So it's going to be a very interesting conversation coming up on Thursday. Thank you,
Yeah.
Moan, for joining me here on the recap show
Thank you
today,
for
this
having
lovely
me.
Monday. Yes. All right. We'll see you all soon. Have a great week. Bye for now.
Have a great week. Bye bye, guys.